What is going on? What is going on? I'm going to do a tweet where I say that this is going. I still never changed my... You know what? Maybe I should change my really nasty icon for now. I like the Abon Hawkins, but it never looks good. So I either need to do a better version of Abon Hawkins, or me from that game, because I'm a character in that game somehow, or I don't know. I'll just do the thing. I did a new Twitter icon today, and we'll just do that. Okay, that's great. Now I will go to the tweeters. You don't like the Jesus monkey picture? I mean, it's terrible, but it's funny. I have to admit, it's funny, even though it's terrible. Okay, so the tweet is tweeted, and we'll see what happens. How's it going, everybody? So once this is off my plate, I'll have one less project on my plate. OS next. Probably will take a bit of a break. Let's get the camera going before we talk about an operating system. Wait. The camera is on, so why isn't it on? There we go. There we go. I don't know. Should it go in up there? Should it go down there? No, Abon Hawkins is not me, but I somehow am in 1000 and anyway. Yeah. The Witness Anniversary Edition. When? That'll happen after Braid Anniversary Edition by an unknown amount of time. It's a little too early for that. No, so this is still the old Braid code base. I did think about translating it out of C++, but I decided that it was better, at least in the near term. It gave us less weird things to do to leave it in C++ for now. But, you know, we might change that in the future. just not for this release. Where we celebrate the huge announcement of the Super Chai Anniversary Edition. I didn't get milk. We can't have Super Chai today without milk. Will the Witness Anniversary Edition have 9 times the pixels? Maybe. I mean, who knows? It'll probably have like an AI algorithm filling in all the pixels for you, right? Or something. What year is it going to come out? Am I working on other secret projects? No, probably. I'm not thinking of any right now. So the commentaries, broadly speaking, are going to be super spoilery. Like I wouldn't do them if you haven't played the game, right? I don't know how we're going to manage that. We're going to have a big warning screen that says, "Warning, don't turn these on unless you want everything to be ruined." We'll see how it goes, though. Where'd the idea for the live action portions of the trailer come from? I think that was David's idea. I mean, he's the one who wanted to do that. I don't know if somebody else suggested that to him or if he came up with it, but I suspect he came up with it. I was worried that that was going to confuse people, that they would think they were seeing a trailer for a live action game. But then Sony decided to put not actual gameplay over it anyway. So that was what it was. Am I going to play Braid while recording the commentary? I mean, what we're going to do today, we'll give people a little bit more time to show up. But then, like, maybe we'll do a straw poll or two and narrow down on a topic. And then I'll just kind of write some commentary on that topic that'll probably make it into the game in some form. And we might record it. And we might try to actually put it in the game today, depending on how much time we have and how long this goes and how tired I get and how good I think it is. But yeah, I thought it would be a fun exercise to just sort of do that in the modern age of the internet. Whose other voice? That is David Hellman's voice. Are we just going to agree that chat today is super spoilery? Yes. Warning, if you haven't played Braid, you don't want to be here. Why don't I put that in the twitch.tv and on the Twitter tweet? Let's put that on the Twitter tweet. Okay. So that is on the Twitterizer. Why do I not? Where is... Dude, the new Twitch interface is so weird. Okay. They keep changing small aspects of it too. Okay. Let's actually, all right, hold on. One thing at a time. Warning, spoilers is now going to go in the title. And you know what? I should like at least make the desktop background something. Oh, I already have that file. Like, things keep going on the other monitor. Go on the monitor that I am on. I mean, we could do that as a screenshot. That might be a little too busy. It's always hard to know. It's always hard to know what's a good screenshot. We'll do that, though. We'll do that. Set as desktop background. Boom. All right, we'll give people 1 or 2 more minutes to show up. What's the process I use to put commentary into the game? I mean, there are many steps to it. Because there's stuff in the game, like if you watch the little trailer, you know, there's commentary where there's markup in the level where we circle things and talk about them and whatever. And depending on what that is, there's different steps to that. But the first step is to figure out what any particular piece of commentary is, and then to like try and record it and make it good, and so forth. Is this game 3? No, this is not game 3. You notice there was no option for commentary on writing or narrative design. Is that intentional? That menu is not really final. So I don't know what the subject breakdown will be. I don't actually know if that's going to be the interface to selecting what commentary is active, because that's a pretty linear thing, and we have some ideas about things that might work better. Do I plan on making commentary a new game plus kind of thing, or is it just something you can turn on? I think we're going to make it something that you can just turn on, because if that's what people are interested in, then making them wait a really long time to get to that is maybe not good. But it also will ruin the game for you if you haven't played the game. So yeah, we'll put a big warning on that or something. Will Ryan Moriarty finish this version of Braid? I don't know. I don't know. Okay. I need to clean all these icons off my desktop, man. I don't want most of them. I don't really want any of them. Like, whoever uses desktop icon, it's just not a thing. Especially Uplay. All right, great. Great. So, the commentary will include a lot of details for sure. It's not going to be very surfacey commentary. Were there any bugs that were misinterpreted as potential Easter eggs? I don't know of any bugs that were interpreted as Easter eggs at all. Maybe there are some, but maybe I just don't know. Okay, well, let's do a step. A step one will be, let's decide the general category of what we're going to do for the commentary. Categories could be like game design, like broadly speaking, like coming up with game mechanics and all that, right? We could do like maybe level design, which is more like specific puzzles or specific features within a puzzle. Like, hey, if you decided that this should be a particular puzzle and it wasn't like how do you decide if this thing is to the left of another thing or above it, or, you know, I don't know. We can get into that if we decide on that category, right? We could do I shouldn't really put art on here that much, because that's something that, you know, David is much more equipped to talk about the specifics of. I mean visual art kind of things, not games as art. We can do again, we can go like programming, overall kinds of programming, like how's the engine generally set up, you know, what works in what way. We could go programming specific, which is like drill down into one feature rather than talk about the whole game, right? We could talk about production, like how do you manage to make this game, right? And then, I don't know, any other overall topics that people want to talk about? I actually don't want to do, like, story probably will be one in the final game, but I don't want to do that today for some reason. Sound design, we could sort of do, but it would be more like sound design of the original game. We could do that. Yeah, I am going to make a poll with these options. We're coming up with what the options should be for the poll. Art direction, right? That's something that I can definitely talk about. So we're going to have a problem with some of this, because some of the things that we ask about, I won't remember well enough, and I'll have to go do research. So we might also, once we pick this, when we have nominations for, why is Emacs freaking out, man? What is happening? Why does it think that we're in Emacs bin all of a sudden? I just want that to stop, so. Okay. Hopefully it'll stop doing that. Okay, is this enough high-level topics? I feel like it is. Yeah, I'm just not in the mood. I have to say this a million times. I'm not really in the mood to do story stuff today. Doing story stuff is hard. And so we're doing easier stuff. Commentary on doing the commentary. I think we have to finish the commentary first before we can comment on the commentary. Some kind of reflection on the game, looking back at it after so many years. I feel like we would need to get a little bit more specific about that, because I kind of almost don't know what that would be. Am I able to talk much about platform cert types of things? Probably not, but also those things are not that interesting. Like, I'm sure there are general things that we can say about them that'll come up, but honestly, it's not. If you're going to spend your time listening to information about how games are made, that's some of the least interesting stuff. The things I wanted to change because I disagree with their design now, but avoided changing for purity reasons. I mean, there's definitely one or two things that we're going to talk about in the commentary that ideally would be different, but to make them different would require changing the whole frickin' game. So I'm not going to do that. So I think something like polishing would go under level design specific puzzles, because we would use probably a specific puzzle to talk about that. Like, talking about polishing puzzles generally is just going to be really very vague and up in the air. But if we talk about that using a specific puzzle, then we can be specific. Like, literally, anyone asking me why a new edition, just go to braid-game. Let me put the link, right? Like, general questions about what is the deal with this can all be answered at the following link that I have just pasted. You just scroll down below the video and you can read the informations. Okay. Any other suggestions for general categories? In a minute or two, we will make a little poll and we will vote on all of these. And we will pick one of these, and then we will pick specific categories or specific topics within the general topic. Wasn't the simpler animation an artistic choice in the first place? No. No. I mean, it was in the way that, like, you always tune things to do the best with what you have, but that was what we had. Cut content should be a category. Maybe, but I don't like... The problem is there's not that much of that, and it's not as exciting as you think. Because again, like, cut content is all... Like, it's usually cut because it never got to the point where it was very specific and something that you could see and understand, right? Like, usually the ideas don't work long before that time. That was a little different on The Witness. On The Witness, there's some stuff that I actually really implemented all the way. For Braid, not really, though. There definitely were some things that didn't go all the way to being full worlds, but yeah. Okay, I'm not hearing any new categories. Unexpected solutions to puzzles. There probably were a few, but that really wasn't a problem in this game, honestly. Platform independent optimizations. I mean, I think optimizations is probably under programming specific feature in some way. Because it's like, how did you make that particular system fast or whatever? Problems in the most generic sense. Game development 100% consists of problems in the most generic sense, so that wouldn't narrow it down like at all. At all. Okay. Well, let's pick these as the categories. I guess I'm going to go to this straw poll site. And maybe that means there will be ads. I don't know. Which category should we pick? Okay. My question is not even going to be that coherent. You know, this whole thing might not go well, honestly. Because I'm tired. Like, anytime you do an announcement or a launch or anything and you're prepping from that, you can get tired. So I might be too tired to, like, think the best, to think real good today. All right. I'm creating a poll. Here is the poll. Back in 2016, I said the updated game would still support Windows XP. Is that still planned? I am not sure. I mean, we want it to be as compatible as possible, but at this point, Windows XP is real old now. Okay, I'm going to warm up some tea while we are doing the votes. If you missed the link to vote, it is here in the chat. You just want to know if this new version, because of labor costs, will cost more than the original. It is already a lot more expensive than the original. I'm sad to say. That is just where we're at right now. I did not design the interface of straw poll. Would I consider the art of communicating well as an integral portion of game development? Yeah. Yeah, I would. Figured this would be slanted toward programming as this is the audience that I've built. Maybe so. Maybe so. But that just means, okay, here's the thing. We'll do a few sessions of these over time. I don't know how often. And whatever subject wins this time will be ineligible for next time. All right? So if, for example, programming were to win today, it just won't be on there next time, so that we have to pick something else. I've just pasted the link again. You have a couple more minutes to vote. And then we will do the thing. Would I ever consider releasing the code as open source for learning purposes? I would consider that. Not for this release, though. Could I ever see myself making a sequel? Yeah, just not for Braid or The Witness. Or if there were a Braid sequel, it would have to be a completely different... It wouldn't be a platformer with time rewind. You would love to see the source code for learning purposes. I mean, that's fine. The thing is, I always feel like there is a lot of source code out there in the world anyway, right now. So, I mean, there is something to be gained from having more, but it's a marginal improvement, you know? All right, the water is boiling. I'm going to go pour the tea, and then when I come back, we will look at the results of the poll. Also, I'm going to open this dope box of cookies that I got. Is this the... Oh, these are the vanillas. Hold on. So a very nice thing to have on a day when you worked hard to get an announcement going out in the world is to have some very nice cookies from Japan that you normally didn't know how to get anywhere except Japan. But then somehow miraculously, they were in your hometown. Look at that. Look at that. Look how good that is. All right. Was Braid's source code used for anything else? No. It is true the Spelunky guys looked at it and they opted to go their own way. Okay, let's see. The results are as follows. Programming seems to be winning. Let me refresh just in case. Yep. Programming is at 30% overall. So you guys are boring. Nobody has ideas of specific things if they want to know. They just want to know the same boring things that we always say. That's fine, though. So now let's drill down into overall engine programming. Like what are some things that we should say about overall how to put the engine together? Memory management, physics. In Braid, have you played Braid? There's not a lot of physics. Platform code. Rewind. The thing is, there's already like a GDC speech online about Rewind that will be in the game in better form as commentary, but that means that I kind of don't need to write any of that now, you know? So I'm actually going to remove that because whatever information I'm going to say is mostly in that video that you could already watch on YouTube. Even though it's kind of silly to say we're not going to talk about Rewind. We could talk about specific things about Rewind, like memory management involving Rewind or something. Asset pipeline. I don't know how interesting that's going to be. AI. My implementation of certain engine components versus the industry standard. What do you mean by engine components? And what's the industry standard? There might be something to say there, but I honestly don't know what it is. Editor. So people are saying editor. So we would be talking about not the features of the editor exactly, but how it's programmed. We could talk about upgrading the engine, but I have not done a lot of that programming, and so there are other people that would best be in the room when we did that discussion, and they aren't. So I don't want to do that topic right now. Data-oriented design or something along those lines. This code was written way before people were saying data-oriented design, as far as I know. And it wasn't data-oriented in the sense that you would think of today. Okay, one more minute. Any more very good suggestions for what to put on this list? Does the anniversary edition use the old code? Yes. It is not a complete rewrite. It is simply the old game with a number of modifications that are substantial. How do you handle switching between the old versus the new version of the game? Very carefully. Serialization and deserialization. That sort of goes with editor, I guess. Something like that. Okay. These are going to be our topics. We're going to go to the straw poll again. The amazing technology of the straw poll, where as far as I know, I can't just... Let me just try pasting all these things in and see what happens. Nope. How did I know that wouldn't work? How did I know that wouldn't work? All right. For which of these technical topics should we do some commentary tonight? Question mark. I guess I'll allow multiple answers. I thought that meant let people answer more than once, but maybe it means, oh, it means select all that apply. Okay. So this one is really, I think, a vote for N of them. And we'll see how that goes. If you vote for all of them, you're a troll. So that is the link that I've pasted into the chat, and you can follow it and you can answer the question. Wow, people are so predictable. How did I know that this would be the thing? What drove the decision? I literally pasted the... Look, if you want to know why we are doing this, you go here to the site for the game and you read that. It is covered there. If you want to talk about commentary, you go to this link and decide what commentary we are doing. Should start with number 2 to avoid the generic most picked on top, maybe. Maybe. We'll give it another minute or so for the voting to settle down. And then we'll actually start. Braid doesn't seem like the kind of game that would need fancy memory management. Well, you'd be surprised. We would have some things to talk about there. Q1 2021 seems quite a short amount of time. Well, I definitely have a lot of work to do, let's put it that way. All right, well, it looks to me like memory management has won. I don't know why I didn't predict that. It's not a super wide margin, but memory management has become victorious. Fortunately, there are interesting things that we could say there. It's tied in with a bunch of different topics. So now we got to figure out what to say about memory management. And I don't think at this point we're going to have polls anymore, because does straw poll scramble the results for everybody, or is memory management win because it was the first item? Anyway, it was the first item. Okay, well, maybe they need to add a scramble the poll options option. Rigged. Who will we be chatting with for the in-game recording? Several people yet to be revealed. Google Forms scramble options. Maybe we'll use those next time. All right. Don't worry if your topic didn't get picked, because we will do more. And in fact, programming is going to be illegal next time completely. So we will do maybe design, maybe production, maybe audio, one of these things next time. Okay. So let me say a few things. I'm going to make a few notes about like memory management, right? So first of all, there's sort of two issues, right, that came up in the game. There's speed. Okay, let me just say this is memory management, right? There's speed is one. And well, size constraints is another one, because on consoles, you had limited memory. I don't even remember at this point Xbox 360 RAM, how much did it have? 512, it says, right? Is that correct? Xbox 360 in Wikipedia. Yeah, 512 megs of RAM. You couldn't use all that RAM, though, because some of that was your operating system, the Xbox operating system, right? Some of that was your program's executable and data. So both, Xbox 360 had 512. Do we want to put other specs? Like, do we care that it's GDDR3? Probably not. We could put up a spec sheet in the middle of the game if you really want the details, right? But so it's one of these things where, 512 megs, it seems like a lot at the start of the console generation, and it doesn't seem like a lot at the end of the console generation, right? 512 megs of RAM. Have to fit OS, code, static data, and then you can dynamically allocate things, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind, is running on a fixed memory platform. Now, there's things like certification, right? One of the tests that you had to pass for certification was, what was the name for it? I believe it was called soak test, where the game had to run for 3 days without crashing in this limited memory environment. Okay, you have to pass that test to ship your game on that console. So you have 512 megs, which, by the way, I doubt you could even open a browser tab in 512 megs anymore, right? And your whole program has to fit in there. And in principle, you could have a tiny memory leak somewhere. But if you're running at 60 FPS, let's actually figure this out, right? So at 60 FPS, right, how long is 3 days in seconds, right? So in seconds, we have 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, right, times 3 days. So you have 259,200 seconds. Let's do that again to make sure, right? 60 times 60, that's how many in an hour, times 24, right, times 3, right? So we have 259,200 seconds in 3 days. If you're running at 60 FPS, that's 15 million. It's over 9,000 frames. So you can't crash without drawing 15 million frames, all right? So if you somehow could use all 512 megabytes, right? So 1024 times 1024 is 1 megabyte times 512. You don't have all this memory available, especially because your game is on the system. But if you did, and you were to leak a little bit every frame, here is the maximum upper bound of how much you could leak, is this, divided by 15,552,000, right? Wait, I just multiplied. How did I multiply? Okay, that's the RAM. Divided by, see the divide symbol there? It means the other direction. Okay, so if the console was completely empty with no operating system or user program, you could leak 34 bytes per frame and barely pass that test. Now, you wouldn't be able to render any frames under those conditions, right? But that's not a very big leak, right? Imagine, so the thing to keep in mind is like any allocation at all is going to be 16 bytes or 32 byte aligned probably, right? So if you leak like one allocation per frame, you're dead. Even if the console's empty. Now, of course, the console's not empty. What's a much more reasonable condition? Like, well, I don't know. Like, let's just say for working memory, you know, the way these things work is you've got your game and it's got some amount of static data that is used maybe in every level. And then you have some amount of data that is used sometime or is used in some occasions, and you can load that or unload that or do whatever you want there, right? And so when you ship your game, you have to decide how these things are partitioned. And I should go back and see if I wrote down anywhere what the numbers were for Braid, but we had something like I want to say 140 megabytes is the number coming to mind. But that is for all dynamic data, including textures that I'm rendering right now and whatever, right? I believe that that's how much that I had to play with. So we can do this calculation again, right? Well, we know what it's going to be, right? Because 140 is, you know, a little more than a quarter of the 512 megs. So, you know, that means we could leak about 8 bytes per frame if this memory was completely empty, which it wouldn't be, right? Because, so we have a couple of categories. What has to go in this memory? Well, all dynamic data, textures used on particular levels, rewind data, right? So like, that's a whole other thing that we can talk about is just whole game's about rewind. And to rewind things, you have to remember what was there. And you have to put that somewhere, right? And you want that to not be inconsistent. You don't want it to be that on some levels, people don't have to worry about running out of rewind, but on other levels, they have to worry really bad. Now, as it turned out, there were challenges that required that anyway. But for the game, broadly speaking, you really don't want that to be noticeable by the user. So you have to allocate some amount of rewind data, which I honestly, again, don't remember what that was on the Xbox, but it was the vague number coming to mind is something around 50 megabytes, right? So we had a 50 megabyte area that was just for rewind to go into and that nobody else could use for any reason, right? So we're going to say that that was probably about that big. It's O of that. It might have been like 38 or something, but I feel like it was 50. I adjusted it a few times, which is maybe part of why I don't remember that well. I can surely go look it up in source control though, right? So textures used on particular levels, rewind data, the entities themselves, right? Stack and heap of the running program, etc. Now there was an additional problem, which is render targets. Like all of this stuff, right? Everything that was live had to fit in that area. Now this area could have been bigger in principle, but the problem was Xbox XBLA games loaded from a secure file on disk that was slow to read. Okay? And this file was so slow to read. So one option that I had was like, hey, all the textures are just going to be on the disk, right? You know, it's a downloadable game. And then when you go into a particular level, we'll make sure the textures for that level are all loaded. And a main like regular published Xbox 360 game could probably get away with that. But XBLA games had their whole own thing, and I/O for them was actually a lot slower than I/O for a regular non-XBLA game. And so the crazy thing that I did was the following, right? So texture maps, it was too slow to load these on the fly without giving players really long load screens. So what did I do? Well, normally you wanted textures in GPU memory to be DXT5 or so. This is a compression format, which is a balance of small and fast for GPU to use. It's not a super small format, right? It takes less memory than a regular texture, but more memory than any super compressed format, like, for example, JPEG or PNG that you would use on disk, right? It's in the middle because it's set up in blocks that are fast for the GPU to use. Now there are more modern texture formats that are a similar idea. They just have different layouts and get a little bit better compression, right? So normally you want that, okay? But the problem is, I wanted to store all textures in the game in RAM because I/O was so slow. I didn't want to be loading dynamic textures dynamically after startup, right? What did that mean? That meant I tried to compress DXT5 further, right? DXT5 is a format that gives you some compression, but not a ton, like I said. And so what I did was I said, can I compress DXT5 further with something like Huffman coding, right? Something that's reasonably fast to decompress. It's faster than loading it through this slow I/O method. And you get more compression if you do that, but it wasn't enough to fit all the textures into memory. So instead, what I did is I used JPEG, right? This is really gross. Used JPEG as in-memory format for the textures, decompressed to actually used to RGBA at runtime. But JPEG didn't have an alpha channel. I don't know if you can do JPEGs with an alpha channel now, but you couldn't at that time with the tools that I had. So we used 2 JPEGs per bitmap. It was still smaller than entropy coded DXT5, all right? So even the version that ships on Steam that you can play right now still, it starts up, it loads all the textures as JPEGs. Then when it's time to use the textures, it decompresses them to RGBA, which is a lot bigger than DXT5, which means you don't get as much fill rate on a GPU. Right? And Braid has lots and lots of particles overlapping, which means it has a very high depth complexity, right? Depth complexity is when it's basically how many times do you draw each pixel on average, all right? So there was all this happening. And even once I had done this, the game would crash after a while, even with no leaks. Even if no memory was being leaked, it would crash. Why? Because rewind was fragmenting the heap. After you played enough levels, fragmentation prevented you from getting RAM of the right size, right? So malloc and free are not magic. if you're in a fixed memory environment and you need a buffer of a certain size, there has to be a contiguous piece of memory somewhere in that limited environment for you to have that buffer exist, right? Like the operating system can't magically make more memory exist in this scenario. It's all mapped, right? And then once you've used it for something, you've used it for something, right? And so Rewind originally just used malloc and free on data structures. Right? This generated fragmentation. Fragmentation killed the game eventually. So we had to not do that, right? So this was, we were linking whatever malloc you get when you use the Xbox. So I switched to DL malloc, right? Which is not necessarily faster or anything, but it gave the ability to make separate heaps, right? So the interface for malloc in C is that there's just one heap somewhere, right? And you ask for memory, and you control the lifetime of that memory with malloc and free, but you can't ever say, these allocations go together next to each other, and you can't ever say, get rid of everything, right? So Braid is a level-based game. So an entire level should exit memory at the same time quickly. You don't want to spend a lot of time freeing random data structures just because you're unloading a level, even though that's how they teach you to program in college. So an entire level should exit memory at the same time quickly, and giving you back 100% of the memory unfragmented that the level used, right? Because that means you can then use that to make any data structure of any size that you need once you appropriate that memory for some other purpose. So DL malloc let us do this by creating separate heaps, and when we exit a particular level, we just release that heap and it's gone, right? And this was most critical for rewind data, because rewind data sort of had the most volume of potential allocations, but really it's good for anything in a game like this. I feel like that's a reasonable first level overview of what I remember as being the memory concerns from frickin' 12, 13 years ago. Are there any questions about what I have put down here so far? On 360, we actually built, oh, right. I forgot that detail. It was 2 textures. Okay, I said something wrong. Sean is reminding me. Okay, Sean is reminding me of something. Okay, so the RGBA thing that I said is true for some set of lower end PC systems that didn't necessarily support shaders, where you could do the following thing that I'm about to explain, right? Okay, so let me, I just accidentally hit something bad over here. Thank you, Sean. Sean helped me out tremendously toward the end of development. I had been working on Braid for a few years, which at the time seemed like a long project. And we were like a couple months from shipping or something, and I wanted to do better rewind effects. And I was just like, man, I'm just tired and can't do this anymore. Or like, I just have enough to do as well. And so Sean came on and did post-processing effects. And that was great. And that's why he knows some of these things. So yeah, the RGBA was a compatibility thing that showed up later. Let me find, where is that? RGBA. Decompressed to a renderable format at runtime, okay? And we'll say what the original on Xbox 360, I feel like, you know, this, like there would be a place for doing this whole commentary as an overview. And then if you're interested in texture formats or something, we can have a separate discourse on what I'm about to say that you could follow as a link or something, right? But on Xbox 360, it was two textures, I don't know how to say it, two physical textures for what would normally be a single texture map. One texture like, I don't know what order to explain this in, so I'm gonna maybe, okay. And then we have to do PC after this. For PCs that were too low end to have sophisticated shaders, we decompressed to an RGBA texture. Okay. Now this JPEG alpha channel thing is actually common to both, I think. Okay, so one texture was JPEGs are stored in YCRCB, which is an alternate color space to RGB. They do this because the human eye is not so sensitive to chromaticity changes. So CRCB can be downsampled or transmitted at higher quality. All right. So in the scheme Braid used on the 360, one texture was full resolution, whatever resolution we wanted a particular texture to have visually on the screen. An example would be XXX. That's where I go to the code and look something up. Whereas the and would contain the luminance Y channel and the alpha channel, which controls blending. Then there would be a texture with the chroma data inside, and this was half the size in each dimension, so it took 1/4 the memory. Right? How much rewind data can fit in 50 megabytes? That's like a whole subtopic. Let's write that down as a subtopic. We're not going to do all this today, but this is a lot of information, right? Like, this is what's funny about game development is any time that I sit down to start talking about it, like from anywhere, there's just all this stuff to know. Like, if I were to explain everything here completely, it's probably 45 minutes of straight talking, right? Anyway, so how much rewind data can fit into 50 megabytes? Examples from various levels in the game, etc. Okay. So it took 1/4 the memory of the full resolution texture, right? Okay, so this, I don't know, like we'll make this more coherent at some point. Okay. Will subtitles be available for commentaries? Yes. We showed that in the trailer we released today. Okay. So, are there any? We're trying to, because there's so many already so many details here to dive down into and talk about. We're going to be strictly on topic. Are there any on-topic questions about this that people have? State the reason we did this was to save text or memory. Right. Yes. So would actually be wasting memory since the JPEG itself held those channels. I'm trying not to be jargony, right? It's hard to explain these things. Only held those channels at, even saying channels, resolution, scaling up the information of the JPEG doesn't make, scaling up the data from the JPEG doesn't add more information or make things look more interesting. It is just what the GPU would already be doing with, oh, this is going to be so incoherent. It's hard to explain things in a way that people can understand, right? I'm just going to type it out. We'll rearrange it later. Is just what the GPU would already be doing with the low res data. There's no advantage to keeping the enlarged version in memory. Technically there is, because you could do a higher quality upsample. So if memory is as scarce, you just keep the texture in the smaller form. That's just a mess. I'm going to have to clean that up. Did I put a rewind length cap in the game to avoid a leak? Well, I mean, if you try to allocate more memory, what happens if you can't get it because there isn't any? So that's a whole other topic. Will I define fill rate? Yeah, probably. I mean, I define depth complexity. Fill rate. We won't go into that one right now, because that is probably something that a number of people in the audience already know, but many people don't, and you know. Do I think the hardware constraints of the original launch platform affected the design of the game in any significant way? Not from a high level. Like I didn't design for the constraints of the Xbox 360 like from the beginning or anything. Like I didn't know. I always thought it would be cool and that I would try to release it on the Xbox 360, but I didn't know for a long time, because you had to get Microsoft's permission, and you know, they have a whole process. But you know, it does take time to optimize your thing for a fixed platform like that. And if you somehow didn't have to optimize as much, you could spend that time on other things, some of which might be, I don't know, more design or more features in some way, you know? Wasn't rewind data allocated in big blocks using virtual alloc rather than dlmalloc? No, I think it was dlmalloc. I mean, I'll go back and check, but I don't believe that I used virtual alloc. That's a Casey thing. It's possible that I did, though. I mean, well, there is one call to virtual alloc, but it is for platform code that I did not write. It's for a port to, it looks like Xbox One. So I didn't call virtual alloc, whereas there's some dlmallocs in there. Yeah, we're not talking about story stuff today, but some other time. Any idea how other console games with big assets tackle this sort of memory issue? They all have their own approach. It depends on what technology you are targeting and what your constraints are in terms of speed and size and all that, and what your pre-existing tools are like. It depends on a lot of things. Okay, on topic questions about programming commentary. We are trying to steer this. Let's do it this way. Let's pick something from what we did here, from what we typed out here, that we can go into more detail on. Something that you are interested in hearing more about. On topic. Did you use any memory profiling tools? Not really. There might have been one that came with the 360 development kit, but I don't remember it. Couldn't the OS defragment memory? How would that happen? How would you defragment memory? Have I considered porting it? I thought about that vaguely, but it seemed like too much of a distraction at the time. We'll probably port it someday in the future, but for now, this release will be C++. I don't, you know, what's funny? Like, I guess the color space is officially YCBCR, but I learned YCRCB at some point, like in the 90s. And so I always think of it that way, even though everybody says CBCR now. So, like, I don't know what changed. I swear it was CRCB when I learned it, man. Were the textures used directly in GPU and decoded by the shader? Yes. And so this is an interesting point, which is... we could do this CBCR thing. So we would read the texture data as YCBCRA, and in the, well, let's say YA, it's a YA novel, and in the pixel shader we would convert to RGB and draw that. I don't know. Like something like converting RGB to YCBCR and back is very extensively covered on the internet, so I don't think we would need to explain it somewhere here. We could just say that's a thing that happens, and you can look this up if you're interested. But we could do the CBCR thing conversion because the 360 had a moderately programmable GPU, which was a new thing. In earlier years, hardware accelerated graphics only let you use a relatively inflexible fixed function pipeline, which would not have been able to do this. So this was kind of high tech for the time, considering. That's worth explaining. How does having separate heaps prevent memory fragmentation? Because, so, you know, when you have a library that implements memory allocation like malloc or whatever, that library is not magic, right? It has to get memory from the operating system and use it, right? The job of a function like malloc is to get memory from the operating system in ways that are probably slow, because getting new memory is slow from the operating system usually. And in chunk sizes that you don't want, because like the operating system wants to give you memory in large page sizes. But if you're calling malloc, you might just want 64 bytes, right? So the job of something like malloc is to bridge the gap between what the operating system wants to give you and what you want to get, right? So well, I mean, any malloc implementation is free to do that in whatever way that it wants, but a reasonable way to do it is to just take individual pages from the operating system and use those for one heap and not intermingle them with storage from other heaps, because why would you do that? And then at that point, you know, you can release all the pages just by releasing the heap, right? And then you, I mean, the API is spec'd that you can release a heap and you release only the memory belonging to that heap. I don't actually remember to what degree this behavior of dlmalloc is explicitly specified, but I mean, that's what that's there for in the API, right? I could explain how JPEG compression works. I don't know. That's kind of out of scope. At that point, we're not talking about the game at all anymore, right? Yeah, pixel shader was the DirectX term, and fragment shader is like the OpenGL term. I don't know if DirectX 12 still says pixel shader, but it was called pixel shaders back then. Was the Steam version just a 360 port? What do you mean by just a 360 port? And no, because I worked on Windows every day. Like, Windows is what I developed the game for. 360 was the port. What are you talking about? Using entitled gamer language like that. You recall me talking about automatic graphics settings happening on startup, and a lot of games don't even do that today. I don't think we would do it today either, apart from maybe picking a global setting very quickly based on hardware ID, but that's a different subtopic, right? That's not going to be part of this, but that could be a thing covered separately. Were there constraints on the stack that you had to work through? I don't remember any. Like in general, honestly, you don't need that much stack, right? Oh, did we F for a minute? Yeah, so, you know, my home internet's been having problems. So once in a while, we might have issues. But somebody asked, did you have any problems with the stack? And I was saying, not really. It is a good idea. We probably should show YCBCR channels. Something like that. Which graphics API did the 360 use? DX9? I think it was DX9. Was it mostly single-threaded? You mean the renderer? Yes. The renderer was completely single-threaded. There was an audio thread, right? But that was pretty much... Oh, there was an audio thread, and at startup, we had a loading thread because... You might remember this because some of the stuff you did might have touched on this, but like, you know, it's an Xbox 360 platform requirement that you have to show some kind of animated picture within N seconds of startup so that people don't feel like their console just locked. And so there was a very small package that we would load in the very beginning that went to like a loading screen. And then while that was going, the loading would happen in the background, and that would do all this like JPEG loading and stuff. But then, you know, that thread was only really for startup and didn't do anything at runtime. Wasn't there a level editor in Braid PC? There was, yeah. It wasn't released with the initial version, but I patched it in later. Did I write a custom allocation scheme using dlmalloc that then the separate components in the game could use? What do you mean by custom allocation scheme? I mean, like dlmalloc gives you a pretty, like it gives you malloc, right? Like what, do you mean like building other kinds of allocators on top of that? I didn't really, but if it did become a speed problem, I could have. I might have actually. I don't know. I don't remember that. So YCBCR is a way of encoding color for stuff on the screen? Yes, it's an alternative way. There are an infinite number of ways to store colors. And RGB is one of them. In fact, RGB is a family of them. And YCBCR is an alternate way that is related to RGB by a linear transform. Was Braid a full-time project during the entire development? Mostly. I did run out of money and have to get jobs in the middle a couple times. And that sucked. Did you write custom allocators? I literally just said I don't remember the answer to that question. Maybe the wording was too different, but that's the question that I was answering right there. Let me warm up some more tea water and then keep going. I don't think we're going to actually use that dialog that we programmed, the dialog launcher box, because I think we just kind of want to do PC without a launcher box, but we'll see. So the fixed function pipeline came built into earlier hardware, yes. And it was even built in on the 360, or at least emulated. It was probably emulated by programmable shaders. I don't actually know. Okay, on topic, people. On topic. What do you want to know further about the things that we have said here, or are we done with it? Are we just done with this, and then I should record part of it, or as much of it as I can do? Any challenges with physics? Not super much. This could be a topic sometime. It's not related to what we're doing here, but that is some of Casey's code, actually. Casey has some code in Braid. He might have forgotten that, but it's true. He didn't work on it directly, but he emailed me a function that I used. Or a couple functions, or a file of code. Did Casey get paid? I don't think so. Did any of the other data need to be compressed, and how? The music needed to be compressed. Right. So we could talk about that. Why is everyone frowny facing? What did I say? What did I say? When to allocate free entities or whatnot, like actual gameplay state memory management rather than just graphics. I mean, we could talk about that. It's not that important, though. It's just not... There's almost nothing to talk about there. I don't feel like. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if Sean did anything else besides the things he just listed. I feel like there might be one or two other smaller topics. I don't remember what they would have been. Does level data need to be compressed in any way? Not really. Like, I mean, maybe that's something we could go into, like, if we're talking about what needs to fit in there, right? We could go into, like, how big is the code? How big is the static data, right? How big is a level? Number of entities, bytes per entity, right? How big is audio compared to graphics? That kind of a thing. That definitely could happen. That, though, would definitely not be in the middle of this. Like, this would be like a cursory mention, and then we would link you to a different discussion of that. Did I do any upfront consideration of data formats which would compress well? So, you know, like the game was made on Windows where these things were not such a big worry. And then at the end, when it was time to make it all run on the Xbox 360, is when I had to figure all this stuff out originally. Did you have cache memory problems? So I do have to say, one of the areas where I probably did not do that good of a job on the 360 port, maybe I would have if I'd had more time, but 360 was really brutal because it was an in-order processor. It had this thing called load hit store, which I don't know if we want to go into it, but basically you can make it so that your processor is not able to make any forward progress until it does a round trip to memory. And typical random code that any programmer would write would cause that to happen frequently. And so you kind of had to be very careful about avoiding load hit store. And honestly, I didn't really do that very much. I think it wasn't maybe that bad because a large percentage of the CPU time was spent in particles, which didn't, you know, for particles, you're generally writing into a linear buffer, right? And so you don't really have that problem very much. You're in more of a tight loop. But I feel like the non-particle parts of the code could have been faster if I had been better at that. Would Braid's memory management have been easier to do with the new language? Probably, although Braid is still a kind of a small game in certain ways where managing memory is less of an issue. I mean, we did plenty of that as we covered here, but the bigger and more complicated your system gets, the more you need that help, right? Does Witness still use DXT5? I feel like it probably does. I honestly don't remember. I mean, I think we use like we shipped Witness on a few different platforms. And for some of those platforms, we know for sure what texture formats are supported and can use alternate ones. But like on a Windows PC, you don't really know what the GPU is going to do. So Andy might know. If he's still in chat, he might remember. I do not remember. But let's try to keep it on topic. On topic. We're trying to make forward progress on the commentary. It's been almost 2 hours. What is entropy coded? It means follow this link to discussion of entropy coding on the internet. It's all DXT5 and DXT1 in Witness. Yeah. And I'm sure we did that just because, you know, if you don't know for sure, like if you're shipping on Windows and you don't know for sure what GPU someone's going to have and what they're going to be able to load, it's like you would have to ship 2 texture formats anyway then, like the one for people who could use the fancy small one and the one for people who can't. And at that point, your file size goes way big. And we were already at like 3 gigs, which was a lot at that time for an independent game. So it just didn't make sense. You'd be adding complication to do that. So yeah, it was all DXT just because that's what we would support. That still might be the right thing to do on Windows, honestly. I haven't looked at it. Like, I don't know like what texture formats are best to use, like in a 2080 Ti and in whatever the equivalent AMD card is. And then I don't know how far back those are supported. And if they're supported on Intel GPUs, like you have to do all this research before you make a major decision like that. Any challenges with the 360 being big endian? Was it actually? I was actually, this came up in conversation the other day, and I didn't actually remember if it was big or little endian, but I guess it was big. I'll trust you if you say it was big. Not really. Like, there's a few things that you have to do where you're endian aware, and then it's good, right? What about how I kept the memory organized? I mean, we literally were talking about that before. Any constraints with executable size? Not that I remember. The executable for Braid was not huge, right? Like, it was not a giant program, and it was written in a relatively simple C++ dialect. So we could have a subtopic that's like number of lines of code, example of programming style, right? Like what that would look like. But it wasn't, you know, like when you hear about all these things like where Facebook runs out of Java patch memory on Android or whatever, like it's usually because they're doing things that are nuts, right? Like they just have way too many functions and stuff. That is not, that kind of thing is not a concern for a reasonable sized program in a reasonable style. Like you're going to run into, you would run into problems with just how much RAM you have available long before you run into problems about how big your executable is, unless you use Unreal Engine. Actually, then you have both problems. Was that the programming style I used back then? Like whatever you saw me programming was probably the Braid style. Or maybe that was Witness style. If that was from Indie Game the Movie, it was Witness code. You know, my code in Braid and the Witness was probably about the same style for both. Witness was probably a little less C++-y on my part, but still roughly the same. Do I have the source code for Braid on hand? I mean, we have to have it to develop the game. Did any of the larger levels cause you memory pain on the 360? Not necessarily levels by size, because even our biggest levels don't have that many moving entities in it, right? So there's like splitting levels into constant and varying entities for rewind purposes, right? So when you load up a level and it has lots of nice decorations, those decorations aren't really going to move for the most part. And so you don't have to spend a lot of dynamic memory on them. They can just kind of live where they live and not really change. And that's good. You know, the things that do change and that you need to remember the old state of, those are the things that really take memory in that game. Did I do automated testing? I didn't really. Like, would I open it up to jog my memory? Maybe. Did I also head development on the PS3 release? From afar, like what happened was some other people did that port, and I just sort of acted grumpy about what they were doing. Did I have to deal with GPU XBLA OS API deprecations? I don't know what you mean by that question. You know, on something like the Xbox or on any of these consoles, once you ship the game for a given SDK, they don't make you patch your game later, right? It runs on that version of the operating system, right? This isn't like the frickin' iOS or something. Did I conduct my own soak tests? Mostly, yeah. Like, I think there was a test in the API submission, maybe, but I didn't use that because, yeah. Okay, on topic. Are we done? Are we done drilling down into these? Let's do the overview again of what we said here. We were talking about memory management. For speed purposes, which we didn't go into this at all, because there was a lot more to say about size. That was really my main concern that I was working on, was size. Dealing with the limited memory of the console and all the things that had to fit in there and how much you can't leak, right? All this data has to fit in there. And we did a lot of shenanigans with texture compression in order to make things fit. This fill rate thing. There was the fact that the game was crashing due to fragmentation. And then there was the fix for that about using an allocator that let us use multiple heaps. And that's it. Wow, it sure seems like we said a lot, but I guess it's summarizable as that. What happens to rewind? What's it start? Runs out of RAM? Does it start flushing to disk? No, it just forgets. It just forgets your information. What was the reason for using DLmalloc over allocating all the memory at startup and handling the allocations yourself, like Hasty shows in Handmade Hero? Probably because I just wasn't used to doing that. And I wasn't sure. Like, the thing is, if you handle all the allocations yourself, you need to do a good job for when you actually do need like random access allocation and deallocation, which probably isn't the majority of your stuff, but it probably is there. And I don't know, it just didn't, that's just not the way that I did it. It probably might have been better, maybe. We would have shipped with fewer dependencies, but I didn't do it that way. I used DLmalloc for some reason. Did the 360 patch system cause any challenges in terms of memory management? I don't think we ever patched. The 360 patch system was such a pain in the butt that I think we just never did it. Could the forgetting of time ever really be an issue? Like, could progress be blocked? Certainly it could, yeah. Like, for that reason, there has to be a way to exit a level and go to the main menu from inside the level, because otherwise there are some occasions where you could get trapped and never be able to get out. And there are some occasions, so in World 4, where you walk left and right and time goes forward and backward, you wouldn't even be able to go left past a certain point in the level. You just wouldn't be able to walk left there. And rather than like doing that, because that would be really weird, we just kick people out of the level when that happens. Would I do a code review of Braid on stream? Probably not, because the problem is, there's code all around in there in various places for interfacing with various consoles APIs. And those, we have non-disclosure agreements with the various console vendors not to reveal their APIs, among other things, even though they're not anything special mostly, and their competition surely reverse engineers that or just gets a copy of the development kit anyway. But nevertheless, we are required to agree to that constraint in order to be able to develop for those consoles, which means if we show those things, even accidentally, we're in breach of our developer agreement, and it's kind of just not worth it. I mean, maybe sometime I could pre-vet a series of files and go through them, make sure that there's nothing like that in them and hopefully not miss anything, and then do that. But that would require premeditation. Like, I couldn't just bust it out right now and do that. For the soak test, does the character just idle in some random level? Could you be leaking memory for certain actions like rewind, which wouldn't necessarily be detected? Yeah, I mean, soak tests like that are just heuristic. Because the person doing the test doesn't necessarily know what leaks anything. Although they might actually have a debug HUD. Because we're using the system malloc on the, or I guess we weren't, we were using DL, right? They might be able to see by pages whether something is slowly leaking over time, and then use that to decide which levels to soak test more thoroughly or which activities to soak test more thoroughly, maybe. I don't know if they did that or not. But yeah, it is definitely the case that they could miss some things. Definitely that can happen. How much memory did the audio thread use? Not that much. Any complications with rewind? Yeah, for sure. But that's not on topic with this. Okay, I feel like we're kind of done here, right? Is this... I just want to verify that we are done with this. Because then I need to decide what to do. Like, maybe I end the stream because it's been a high energy day and I'm tired. And if we do that, then we have determined that this is roughly the shape of a commentary that will go in the game. And then I just have to refine that later, maybe off stream. Or maybe we start refining some of this on stream. I don't know. But I just want to make sure that we've covered this topic. Save files for Braid are pretty small. It just saves like what levels you've been to, what levels you've won, how many times you've completed the game, which worlds are unlocked, and the positions of the puzzle pieces. Maybe there's something besides that. But it's roughly just that. It's a small amount of memory, right? Well, which puzzle pieces you've acquired and which ones you haven't as well. I feel like that's it. If we're going to stay on topic, I'm not So you have 60 seconds to no, it's typing can be slower than that if you're writing something intelligent. You have 180 seconds to do something on topic here, or we'll close the topic. And then maybe we can do more random Q&A and kind of wind down the stream. $140 characters. I think there was some way that I could tell how much memory was unallocated on the 360. I honestly don't remember the details of that. Who hosts XBLA speedrun leaderboards? Microsoft hosts those. Yeah, we don't do that. It's like it's a sealed network, right? It doesn't not host things on the internet that it connects to. Are the number of entities fixed at load time? Do entities stick around once killed? Was there a DLmalloc call for every entity? That's a little more on topic. Let's do that one first. Probably yes. Would I do it that way on a new engine? No. But, you know, the code there was a little less optimized. And probably, in fact, probably there was a lot more than one, right? Because the thing is, string fields on entities were dynamically allocated as well. So an entity would be one allocation for the main memory of the entity, and then n allocations for the strings, and then for certain kinds of entities, they would have additional allocations for whatever, you know, working memory they needed to do their job, I think. I don't, you know, I wouldn't have that many allocations these days if I were doing that. But fortunately, you know, Braid is not a game that had trillions of entities in the levels, so it wasn't that bad. Okay, so back to the entities fixed at load time. So not really, because stuff inside levels can make new entities, like, you know, cannons can shoot dudes and whatever. And like in principle, I guess you could compute an upper bound of how many entities could exist, I guess, but that seems very error prone, and I did not do that. So really you can, if more and more entities get created, that many can just be in the world. Do they stick around once killed? No, they get freed once they're gone. Did I ever have a problem with vendors not being as responsive as they would be to a larger studio all the time? All right, yeah, okay, so that's officially it for this. And I think what we're going to do is we're just going to put this in the commentary notes, and then I will make this into n different pieces of commentary at different levels. And we'll come back some other time and do this again on a different topic, right? Maybe a design topic instead of a programming topic or something. And that'll be fun. Okay, so let's broaden it up. Are there general questions about this release of the game? So we're going to stay on topic with a different definition of on topic. It's just about Braid Anniversary Edition, generally speaking. Out of all the platforms the game was ported to, which one did you find the most pleasant to work with? I mean, I liked programming on the Xbox 360. probably more than Windows. Like it was, well, okay. I liked the actual real part of programming for the Xbox 360, which was like the fixed platform, the known CPU, the known GPU, the known amount of memory. All that was great. The part that I hated was a lot of the APIs they give you to work with are stupid and don't make sense and are themselves like, when these APIs were designed, they obviously weren't thinking of the issues that they would then later make certification requirements for that you would have to comply with. So you ended up having to deal with all these certification requirements that if the API were different wouldn't be a problem. And instead of fixing the API, they made you just waste untold weeks of your life. So that part sucked. So for that part, I liked Windows much better. But for the actual real programming part, I like the Xbox better because it's fun to program for a known computer. How much hand did I have in making Braid Anniversary Edition? Some, right? Not as much as if it were the original game. So, you know, we definitely had people help, for example, on programming. One of them was in chat for a while. I don't know if he's still here. Andy sort of has been doing the majority of the programming on it for a while now. But, you know, we often have discussions about how to do things. And when I remember how stuff worked or what the right answer was, you know, I definitely say that. I definitely have done some programming on it, just not the majority. It's actually been a little while. Like the last thing I did was just not even a user-facing thing. I made the editor rendering sharper. Yeah, Andy's still here. Yeah, so Andy has been the lead programmer on the game for a while. Except in the weird way that, like, because I know how the game was put together, sometimes I know stuff about what's the right solution for a problem, or at least have a good guess at it. And then David, of course, has been doing the repaint, and well, not just the repaint, but coming up with the concepts for the things that would be added, and painting those and adding animations and stuff. But we have big meetings where we talk for a while about like what should the animations be and all that. So I am somewhat regular. Okay, let me put it this way. I was somewhat regularly involved for the history of the project, but part of the way it was structured was to get everything revved up while I was getting the programming language ready and our other game ready, right? And so now that those are all together, I'm going back to almost all of my time being on Braid from now until ship, because the main thing that has to happen now is commentary being added. And there will definitely be commentary from people besides me, but I feel like a lot of it's going to be from me. So that is what's happening. And that's part of what we're doing right now, is figuring out some more of the commentary. Who did the live action portion of the trailer? David with Area 5 did that. Chat isn't such a good interface to answer programming questions. That is very true. Especially, I mean, honestly, video isn't either. Because you get done answering a question, and then 60 seconds later, someone shows up in chat and asks the same question. And it's like, it's the nature of chat. Are the new textures targeting a 4K resolution? We're trying to be a bit future-proof and go above 4K, although I wouldn't say that we're exactly targeting 8K. like I don't think we have 8K worth of information in our source textures. It's a little bit inconsistent because different things are at different size. But I mean, I think we're so sharp now, or we have so much visual detail, that if ever in the future, if there's like 16K displays and for some reason you really need to have all those pixels in your game, I feel like we're going to be able to do an automatic upscaler to get there from where we are. Like, you know, from original Braid at 720p to where we are now, there is definitely just added human detail that you just wouldn't have been able to automatically generate what we have now. But when it gets down to really fine differences like that, it's like, you know, in 20 years, if we do another re-release of the game, it's probably an AI sharpening filter or something to fill in the missing pixels. How long have we been working on the project? It's been in the background for a while. I actually don't want to guess a current date, but it's been a while. It's been some time. Could make all the art vector based, and then it would be infinitely scalable. Nah, I mean that doesn't work that way, because you would have to reauthor all the art in a vector program, but the style involves being not vector. It would just look super different if it were vector. Curious what you think about persisting games as art and what that entails as a studio who wishes to make that happen. I mean, there isn't really an argument about that anymore, is there? Like back when Braid came out around that time, there was this whole argument about whether video games can be art. Like even among the games industry, I don't think anyone is having that argument in the year 2020. Like, I think everybody agrees that they can be art, and some games are better art than others, right? I mean, there have been major American art institutions that have had game exhibits. I didn't think those game exhibits were very good, but nevertheless, they showed, you know, an institutional recognition of video games as being art, which by the way doesn't have a whole lot of effect on whether that's actually true, but you know, it's what people use as a basis for their own recognition, I guess. Have I rethought discussing the more personal themes and ending in the commentary? I don't really want to do that, because I want that stuff to stand on its own without having to be talked about. So there probably won't be commentary about what any of the story stuff is about. There might be some about the process or about how it changed over time or something like that. But even that is very dicey. Even that very quickly goes into territory that I don't want to go into. How did you do the animated painting effect if the base files are all raster? You could ask Andy about that. He could tell you all sorts of things that we tried, some of which are in the final game, and some of which we tried and we're just like, well, that's not really... Yeah. So David's source art is way above 4K, but I don't remember how far above 4K. The guideline originally, when we started the project, was, you know, like Apple had 5K Mac monitors at that time, even. And so we said, well, 5K monitor is sort of the target. But yeah, we want to future-proof, but at the same time, you know, beyond a certain level, future-proofing... I don't know. Like I said, if we need to scale from like 5K to 16K, that feels to me more like an automated process than a hand paint. Which isn't to say there wouldn't be hand painted. I don't want to think about an anniversary edition, but if there were one, you could probably find things to do, but I don't think there will be. Like at some point you have to leave the game alone, man. You don't think that games as art is really a widespread viewpoint? I mean, it's certainly not as controversial as it was at the time. As someone who lived through that time, I'll tell you. I will tell you. Have I read Roger Ebert's article claiming that video games can never be art? Yes. I think that Roger Ebert had a very limited view of what constituted art. Like when he thought about games being art, he was picturing them being art in exactly the ways that film are art, because that's what he critiques all the time. And he's actually mostly correct in that small area. And you know, this is something I agree with because I've given speeches about this. Like, video games are very bad at doing the kind of art that movies are very good at. But what Ebert didn't see, because he doesn't know games, is that video games are very good at doing art in certain other ways that you wouldn't be that familiar with if you didn't play them, right? And so he was kind of right and kind of wrong, but in the broadest strokes, he was certainly wrong. Like if the conclusion is, oh, they can't be art, that's completely wrong. They can't really do the things that film can do competently, then yes, he's right. Will there be any witness content as a secret egg type, Easter egg type thing? No. We're not trying to. We don't want to put a lot of wacky stuff in the game because we're trying to preserve the game. We're not trying to make it into a random different thing, you know. Like it's still Braid. You know, it's not Braid with CGI dinosaurs on Tatooine or whatever. A few years ago, you had a video on some ideas around frame rate independence that you were talking about for Braid. We definitely worked on that a fair bit for this release. And yeah, so that's actually a whole subtopic that I probably already have in notes somewhere else, but I'm going to write it down, which is the pain in the butt is original Braid wanted to run at a multiple of 60 hertz. And by that, I mean a lower multiple. So it wanted to run at 60 or 30 or 15. I covered this in that article, I think, but that's not very good for modern displays. Like, one of the first things I did was I bought a 155 hertz monitor for this project, right? So that we would do something that wasn't a multiple of this and make sure the game worked on that. And that's another reason to do it as a separate release, because like it's kind of a different simulation loop than the original one in some major ways. If the goal is preservation, why significantly improve the more unique areas sort of stuff? Well, I mean, just because I felt like they deserve better. You know, like the goal isn't exactly presentation. You know, like I'm not a historian. I'm allowed to modify the game, right? It's just I want to do it respecting the game. And so we're not modifying it in bad ways, hopefully. And we're just being very careful. But also, you know, I forgot to mention, we could show this. This will be fun. You know, we talk about this in the trailer, but it's worth showing. It's a little bit scary showing the file tree. Who knows what's in there? So if I go to like some level, like this one, like we sort of show this area, right, at the end. At any time, I could hit X to go back to original Braid, right? And it's running at the original resolution, all the original textures, right? So all that stuff is preserved. It's not the default experience that people will have, but then you can switch back to the new version, right? So when we do stuff like this, if you don't like it, or if you think it's pooping on the game in some way, you can go back to the other thing. And it also switches the sound and everything. I guess I think I have sound turned off because when we do meetings, we probably want to think about this a little bit. This is from the original game where when you're in the sound menu, we play sounds so you can actually tell how loud it is, which is something most games don't seem to do. It's just we might be able to do a little bit better job than that somehow. I just haven't thought about it. Anyway, so this is the new sounds. Hopefully, can you guys hear that? I should turn on the music too. Let me pull up my OBS. Let me put my head in. It's probably better up here for this. Will make me a little smaller. No, you guys can't hear that. So, or except through the microphone. Okay. There we go. I'll even turn it up a bit. And then we'll turn on the music. This is new Braid, right? This is old Braid. The music doesn't sound that different, but the new one is processed a little differently, and we actually do switch back and forth. But like the jumping and landing effects and stuff are different. You can actually see right now that this air turn is temporary. See how he sort of switches to more of a cartoon look? It's because those frames haven't been drawn in yet. Anyway, kind of loud. Okay, I'll turn it down a little. Will we sell the soundtrack? I don't know. Like, we sell a digital version already. We might do like a printing of it. It's just we'd have to work with a label that really wants to do that. Like, that's going to do a good job. We have some people talking to us, and I'm just not convinced it's going to be good if we do it. That's all. Let me go to one of the levels. There's some stuff that we do where the music gets really cool. So like here, like there was music here in the original game, which is what we're doing right now, but it's kind of quiet. And like it's just louder and more atmospheric in this version. But like I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah. There's like, by the time you get to World 6, we're doing like trippy mixes of the music. Let me go here again. I think it's this one. So like this music is a mix of some of the earlier stuff that you've encountered before in the game. And if I go back to here, it's the song just like in World 2, right? Which is cool, but like maybe not quite helping with the mood here, right? But then if I switch back to New Braid, So, you know, you know, it's not an exact preservation. Is this using WYs? No, it isn't. Will it support HDR? Probably not. I mean, a 2D game is pretty hard to make HDR and have it be viewable. I don't know. Have I solved the time rewind thing? What time rewind thing? I mean, the original game had time rewind, so we must have solved something. We actually have a weird texture seam here that I just saw, or something. Maybe that was a particle. Maybe that was that edge of that particle and it just looked different. Can you expect 144 Hz precision action? Hell yeah. Remasters that fail to preserve that original experience is something you see as a problem. Yeah, although it isn't exactly the original experience either, right? Because, you know, the original game ran at 720p on displays that were better at displaying 720p than your monitor, your 4K, 5K, 14K future monitor, you know? Like, just like MAME ports of old arcade games running on Windows like don't actually look that much like the old arcade games looked like. It's similar. It's not as bad as that actually, but it's a similar thing. Can we please update the Braid library art on Steam? Well, I mean, maybe. Maybe now that we've released this, we can do stuff like that. Or not release this, but announce this. We have the bandwidth to do stuff like that, maybe. I was looking at that menu and I was like, oh, it's so blurry, but that's because we're in old Braid, right? That's new Braid menu. Old, new. Old, new. I don't know how much of that is getting blurred out by Twitch, by the way, either, but I like the way these particles look. They're real nice. Real nice. Why is it pillar box? That's just how the menu in this game works. Like it opens out like this, and then like if you go to another menu and then go back. This is just how the menu system worked. Are we keeping the toggle in the release? Yes. Is the soundtrack also being remastered? Good question. I mean, I kind of don't want to mess with the original songs. I mean, those songs belong to those artists. Why should we mess with them too much? Can you see level 3.8? Well, keep in mind, not all levels are finished. Yeah, this one's probably going to get some more detailing. So here, you know, this tree here that's above me is sort of a central feature of the level. And it just sort of stops where it is. Like this tree in old 3.8 is sort of a generic asset that's used in a bunch of places, but then it kind of became central to the level physically, and then so we sort of designed the new level art around that. It's just, I would like to go in and detail the background on the bottom more. I feel like that would be nice. This is probably the best level. I actually think this is one of the uglier levels in the game, design-wise. It's one of the ones that, I mean, it's interesting and stuff, but it's, when I think of the canonical best levels of Braid, this level isn't in that list. What's the paintbrush? That's a commentary. I don't know if that's what they're going to look like in the final thing. This is just, you know, this is just our working dealy bopper. Which one? I don't think I could pick a favorite level. I'm just saying, I think of that level as tier 2. It's a tier 2 level instead of a tier 1 level. These are all commentary topics. How do you do the music switching? We are actually playing both tracks at the same time, and it's just one of them has a volume of 0. That is literally what is happening. Mentioned in the past, I purposefully left the game plain, but now seem to be adding a lot of extra detailing. I am not sure, like, to comment on that, I would have to know what specifically I said, because I feel like it's being interpreted slightly in a different way than I meant it. But I can't say. Any tier 3 levels? I don't think so. I don't think so. There's no levels that are just like bad and that I wish weren't in the game. But there are levels that are the best, and there are the levels that are not the best. But I don't have them in like a full ranking like that. Like, I can't tell you what the 17th best level is. I have no idea. Audio guys have very specific opinions about how long the crossfades between the HD and SD tracks should be per level. Yep. Well, that's, you know, I mean, that's their job, is to be picky about how things sound. So, whoops. 0-1 is not a level. That level's a spoiler. We can go to the cool title screen. I don't know if my picture will be covering it, but I like doing this. Let me see. Wow, my camera really is pointing up these days. Oh, no, you're good. Like, I really like the fact that we made it say Anniversary Edition, even though that was probably just for the trailer, and it will probably not say that in the release. But, like, you know, you look at this and you're like, oh yeah, that's what the Braid title screen looked like, totally. But then you switch to the old version and you're like, oh, it's kind of different. And there's just like less, even though at the time this was the level that we worked the hardest on and added the most detail to, it just doesn't feel like there's that much when you're seeing it all like blurry at 4K and stuff. But then here it's like, okay, I see that there's stuff going on the screen. But yeah, this was my favorite screen in the original. It's not a level, right? So it's not in the tier 1, tier 2 level categorization, but this was my favorite screen in the original game, and it's probably going to be my favorite screen in the new game. Commentary about how I chose the music. There's going to be a few. I did just record a draft for one of those last week, and there's going to be another one. I recorded one about how I picked the music, or how I found it, and what I might have used instead. And next one is going to be the fact that I was trying to find things that were rewindable and sounded interesting under rewinded stuff. Can't read the chat now. I have to Alt-Tab for a sec. There's something a little too stark about the fire particle effects in the text. Maybe. I mean, it might just be what you're used to. This is more abstract and not necessarily fired. That's true. There's this problem, though. There's a problem that happens when you make graphics more detailed, is sometimes you have to really decide what they are. I don't know. I think this definitely looks good. It is a little bit of a question to me whether it should unambiguously be fire or not. But it looks so good that I'm tempted to just not question that. But yeah, that question did come up for sure. So the original one, this was not really a font. This was me trying to trace over the letters from the official game font, but with just line segments, because that was the only tool I had programmed to generate particles. And so you can't really get anything very close to any specific font with just particles coming out of some line segments, right? And so with this one, we actually have more control over the particle emitter shape, which is something that I would have done. See, this is where it's definitely different from what I did originally, but I would rather have done something like this, and I just couldn't at the time. Maybe the anniversary edition is a bit too long. I literally just said that's probably not going to be on the screen in the final release. Will the new version have a colorblind mode? I mean, I'm not sure what we can do there. We might be able to, it's not the kind of game where there's lots of objects where you need to match them or anything, right? So there might just be, we can do a scan for scenes that are just too hard to read for certain kinds of color blindness and let you tweak that. But, it's not going to be like a match 3 or something where objects have different textures on them. Any chance it'll be released in physical format? I don't know. It's very unlikely. It's just not... It wasn't really worth doing before, and it's just kind of not that... It's especially not that worth it now. Nobody buys games in physical form, hardly, anymore. Unless they're super mainstream AAA games. And even those, especially after coronavirus time, nobody's going to be doing that. Could I explain how the math behind particles work? That might be good for another stream, yeah. this isn't that different between the two versions. Almost can't see the difference right here. Did I fix the font in the level editor? I did at some point, yeah. I think. I'm not sure I remember which particular episode, but it is actually like sharp now. I definitely did that. It's not really centered on the buttons exactly, but it kind of never was because I didn't sweat that much over the level editor. Here, let's do something fun. Let's do something completely stupid. I don't think I made a better way to do this. Wow, this editor sucks. I can't believe I put up with this. Where did that go? Okay, hold on. Let's put some monsters in here, right? Like, that's what this game really needs. Is monsters in the house that you could jump on. Braid Anniversary Edition will not actually have monsters in the house. Especially because if you die in here when the game starts, there's no rewind. Also, I didn't put them at the right Z value, so he's like going behind the bathroom, which is awkward. See, I don't have rewind powers yet, so I can't get them back. What happens if I die? Just soft lock? Probably. Probably what happens is I have to use a cheat key to restart the level. If I die in the house, it's probably really bad. Let's find out. Okay, it puts up the prompt because you're not supposed to ever be able to die. But when I hit shift, it does not do anything. The bad ending, yeah. I mean, people complained about this game being hard when it came out. Imagine it was that hard. Wait, why is the undo's broken? I undid back to the start and like now there's a monster there. That shouldn't be. That's very weird. All right, well. Imagine that, a platformer where you literally miss one jump and it's game over. That would be fun. Okay, monsters are gone. Anyway, so I guess this has been our stream that goes along with the announcement of the project. Oh, hi, Casey. I don't know how long Casey's been here. Are all of the puzzles identical, or did you improve massage any of them? So far they are identical, but I suspect that I will do some tuning on some of the puzzles before release. I expect that that will happen. How does audio rewind work? We literally just play the samples backwards. You wanted to suggest a commentary topic. Someone said you weren't talking about story commentary right now. Yeah, you can certainly suggest it and I'll take it down for later, maybe. It's just I'm not... Something that's totally out of bounds for this project is I'm not going to talk about like what the story means in any way, which is... That's a pretty widely encompassing restriction. So if it's something like that, I won't do it. But if it's something else, then maybe. How will tuned puzzles work with the instant toggle? Well, that's a good question. Maybe you could die accidentally. We just have to see what they are if we do that. The change in writing for World 6. I mean, a few of the worlds changed before release. I don't remember specifically World 6. I could go back and look at what it was. But yeah, I mean, topics like that are, if I can find a way to talk about them without going into territory that I kind of don't want to go into, then I will. Otherwise, maybe not. How about subtle animations inside the canvases? Do you think that that's not happening right now? It's probably easier to see when not on a Twitch stream. But yeah, and it's also easier to see on the lit up puzzle here. On the darkened ones, it's just a little bit less noticeable, but things are for sure happening. How do you know when to start playing backwards? Do you assign a sound to the frame it ended on? Or does the system constantly checking X previous frames for sounds? No, it's more like at any given time. Oh, I see what you're saying. So if you're playing time backwards, it's basically the same as time going forwards in the following sense that you have some sound effects that you're playing and new ones may happen, right? But if you're going backwards in time, then the new ones that happen start at the end and go from the end, right? And so you just translate that into code is really all it is. It's not crazy sophisticated. You never notice those animations. Well, they are not in the original game. Here's old Braid, and those canvases do not move. That's a level edit mistake right there, actually, or something. What engine was this developed in? Yeah, it was just programmed. Oh, I just moved it when bringing the monsters. Okay, I'll double check that later. Yeah, it's quite likely that I messed that up. Just program the engine. That's like what we did in the old days. Like, I don't understand why. I mean, I do, but like, that was just what you did to make a video game in the old days, is you just made the game. I mean, I think Unity probably existed. Isn't Unity originally from like 2004 or something, and it's just been around for a long time? So it probably existed when I started this game, but certainly wasn't appropriate to make this game in. is a topic that could be discussed in commentary. Those were the days, man. Original World 1, why it was there, why I cut it, what I feel about the current World 2. That's going to be an interesting discussion because, yeah. What about Mountain King? Oh my God. See, yeah, that's worth talking about. I really liked Mountain King and nobody else did, man. But that would have turned it into a pretty different game than it ended up being if I'd kept that concept, you know. So the deal is, the original thing was going to be that in each world there was a door that you could go through somewhere near the puzzle room. You know, the puzzle panel where you can put together the puzzle. And in fact, it might have been that you finish putting together the puzzle and it would open the door. And that would take you to a modified version of an 80s arcade game where you could use the particular rewind power of that world in the arcade game. And so like I was going to do Burger Time, but I never got to that. I did Mountain King. I did my own version of Mountain King, which I thought was fucking baller. It was better than the original game by far, or not by far, but like, you know, it's not a fair comparison because you have many decades of experience on that game. I had some preliminary implementations of a couple other games. Now's my chance to totally Lucas this. Yeah. I don't remember what other games were in there. So it was going to be like Burger Time was going to be the World 2 for just Rewind, I think. And then Mountain King was going to be Rewind with some things that are exempt to Rewind. And then Time Tied to Space. Maybe that was actually going to be Burger Time. Because like you walk across the burger patty and then you would have to keep walking for it to fall and stuff. I don't remember. The thing is, it would have to be Burger Time on a wrapping level or you would never be able to do it. Put it in the anniversary edition. No, we are not doing that. We are not doing that. So if level editors are a key tool for iterating on game content, how similar are they between games? Well, we definitely start with the editor for one. So the editor for The Witness started as the Braid editor. The editor for the Sokoban game started as the Witness editor. But then you change them very heavily very early on because they're for the wrong thing. And honestly, the Braid editor was not very good. It was very hard to use. And so the first thing I decided for Witness was like, look, it's going to be a bigger team. We're going to be building a 3D world. The editor has to be better. So I invested more time into it up front. And it never was good. The Witness editor never was like good, but it was better than the Braid editor substantially. Do I still have the original prototypes placeholder graphics? Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm pretty sure I have those. Let's see. I guess I don't have them unzipped right here. We definitely have them archived, but they're not in the distribution of the main game, I don't think. So I can't show you right now. I think I've shown them on stream before, though. Do I think I'd be less likely to do commentary for the witness due to how opaque the story, what it's about is? No, I just wouldn't do that part. I just wouldn't talk about that. Have I ever given a talk about building level editors? Not an entire talk. I've definitely talked about how we do it in interviews and streams and stuff. Witness is one game that you don't think needs a remaster? Well, I hope not, because it's only from a few years ago, but, you know, in the future, 10 years from now, will you feel like Witness doesn't need a remaster? I don't know. Would I make a movie? Probably not. Probably not. There's just too much game stuff to do. Okay, everybody, we're getting off in the weeds on the questions, and it's been a 3-hour stream, and I've had a big day today, so I'm going to sign off. I'm going to save these notes that we did. It was fun to sit there and talk about this and make these notes, and then these will be turned into actual commentary later. I mean, maybe sometime we'll do a stream. Like, it might be fun to do a longer stream sometime where we go all the way to recorded rough draft commentary in the game. Maybe we'll do that next time, but we'll just start with a very focused subject like design on a particular level or something. And we'll just do that. All right. Let's see if we could raid somebody. Maybe there's somebody else on Twitch who has announced an anniversary edition of their game that we can go visit, right? They would be in science and technology, wouldn't they? Look at me scratching my head in a funny way. Streaming with dinosaurs. I don't know where to send people. Should raid XRA? Really? A lot of the time, he's just kind of idle. I feel like. But it has been a long time since we have raided that stream. There'll be a stream tomorrow? I don't think tomorrow. I actually need to take a day off for like the first day in weeks, but you know, sometime soon. We could raid somebody with hardly any viewers, like we did last time. That was fun. Code Romantic. Is it a dating game crossed with programming? That's a dating game where you never end up dating anybody. We can't keep raiding the same people all the time. I don't know. I very rapidly get lost and stop seeing things once we get this far down in the stream. So I am searching for these things that people are saying, and they are not on this page. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, this could be fun. Activity is occurring, so...
Does fairly update.
Oh, all right. Let's do it. Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you later on. I will, because the Braid streams are of pretty general interest, next time I do one that involves commentary creation, I will be sure to announce it. Thanks, everybody.
It's so weird. Whoa, crap. Hey, Naysayer, how you doing? Thanks for the raid. How's it going, everybody?